Welcome back to World News, where we present you the most important and funniest news from the past week. This week's topics are the recovery of 5 new ancient tombs, that the Russian oppositionist Alexei Navalny was sentenced to 9 years imprisonment, and the weekly update on the Russo-Ukrainian war. We hope that you enjoyed this week's news, so let's jump right into the video. The recovery of 5 new ancient tombs. The pyramids in Egypt and other ancient tombs throughout the whole world have always been a point of interest for many people. Therefore, they were explored by scientists and other people for years, but we still don't even know their real purposes, because we only know around 20% of the space in the grave of Tutankhamun, for example, but that would be enough to cover several other videos. Anyways, Egypt just announced that explorers discovered 5 ancient tombs in the vast necropolis south of Cairo that hadn't been known until then. These tombs are said to be something around 5,000 years old and therefore go back to the Old Kingdom and First Intermediate eras, Egypt's Antiquities Ministry said. They were excavated northeast of the Pyramid of Menre, and the tombs, which are engraved with colorful shapes, belong to top officials, the ministry added. Mustafa el-Waziri, the head of Egypt's Supreme Antiquities Council, said that the first tomb would belong to an official named Irie, while the second grave could belong to the wife of a man named Jared. And the third tomb probably belongs to Pepi Nephene, who was the supervisor of the Great House, a priest and the purifier of the house. So the term supervisor and priest should be clear, but what is a purifier? So a purifier's task basically was to purify water, which means to keep it pure and free from germs. That was mostly achieved by boiling it, heating it under the sun, or by dipping hot iron into the water. But back to the tombs and their owners. The fourth tomb is said to belong to a woman named Peti, who apparently was the priest of Hathor, the goddess of fertility and love, while the fifth tomb is for a man named Tinu, the overseer and the supervisor of the royal house. And I know that this topic isn't that important or funny, but I think that it's pretty interesting and something apart from the Russia-Ukrainian war, which really has become a rarity in the news game. Russian oppositionist Alexei Navalny sentenced to 9 years imprisonment. You might have heard of him, you might have not, but the history between the Russian government and Alexei Navalny goes long back. Alexei Navalny is a Russian oppositionist, which itself is pretty hot already, since Russia isn't exactly known for being too nice to people that are against the Russian government or just against Putin. And he knows that. Alexei Navalny has tried to make a change in Russia for quite some time. At one point he even joined a political party which he didn't fully support, just to be heard by the media and the Russian people and to get elected president, which he wasn't, by the way. So when that didn't work out, he joined protests against corruption because the re-election of Putin was and still is highly questioned. He then was arrested for protesting, which might have been the biggest mistake the Russian government made that year. Because after his arrest, Navalny gained popularity and soon his blog was available in English. After his time of imprisonment, he became a symbol of the protests against the Russian government and electoral fraud in Russia. That of course made him one of Putin's worst enemies in Russia, and he only made it worse by investigating electoral fraud as well as corruption in Russia and a few similar things. Apart from that, he was active in several other areas throughout Russia's legal system, and of course he wrote about all the unfair and weird things that happened in Russia's legal system, for example, in his blog. And I can't really sum up all the things that he's done over the years, but I can tell you that he was arrested multiple times and that he spent quite some time in prison. But fast forward to more recent times. On August 20th, back in 2020, Alexei Navalny was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent, which basically is a very strong gas that attacks the nervous system. He was hospitalized in serious condition after he became violently ill on a flight from Tomsk to Moscow, and was taken to a hospital in Omsk, Russia after an emergency landing there and put in a coma. He then was evacuated to the Charité hospital in Berlin, Germany 2 days later. The use of the Novichok nerve agent was later confirmed by 5 OPCW certified laboratories. Oh, and by the way, OPCW is short for Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. So, very long story short, he was later discharged from the hospital and it was never confirmed, but the chances of this attack having been ordered by the Russian military or even Putin himself are very, very, very high. So, Navalny did what any person that just survived a tried assassination by Russia would do and immediately flew back to Russia. Don't ask me why, but the doctors that saved his life over hours, if not days, must have felt something like this, because the next attack on Navalny probably wouldn't take long, and they were right. Well, it wasn't exactly an assassination, but, and now we've reached the topic that I wanted to talk about, why I just told you his entire biography, he was accused of fraud and sentenced to 9 years in a Russian work camp, prison. And chances are high that the Russians will try to kill him again, so let's just hope that he survives these years healthy and with all of his body parts still intact. Damn, that was a very long introduction for a topic that only was 2 sentences long, but I hope that you understand that just telling you these 2 sentences wouldn't have made much sense, since many people wouldn't have known who he is or what happened, so I really hope that this topic didn't take too much time, but if so, please tell me in the comments and I'll try to keep my topics a bit shorter in the future. The Russo-Ukrainian War. I don't longer find any creative intros for this topic, so I just thought right away. The Russo-Ukrainian War has proceeded further and the battles continue. To pay his respects and to show his participation, US President Joe Biden visited Ukrainian refugees who have fled to Poland. He tweeted that you don't need to speak the same language to feel the roller coaster of emotions in their eyes. Apart from that, the US and the EU announced a new partnership to reduce the continent's reliance on Russian energy, which is the start of a year-long initiative to further isolate Moscow after its invasion of Ukraine. So it seems like the non-participating countries still try to kill Russia's economy, which is gonna take a while. Because to stabilize the ruble, Putin announced that Russian gas and oil will have to be paid in ruble. So many smaller countries that fully rely on Russian gas or oil will be forced to strengthen the ruble. But we will see how that'll play out, because some countries, like Germany for example, already denied paying with ruble under any circumstances. So the economical clinch will probably continue going back and forth, but what about the physical war itself? Well, Russian forces in Ukraine appear to have shifted their focus from a ground offensive aimed at Kiev to instead prioritizing what Putin calls the liberation of the Donbas region, suggesting a new phase of the war. And it's too early to know whether this means that President Vladimir Putin has scaled back his ambitions in Ukraine, but Russian military moves this week indicate a recognition of the stout Ukrainian resistance. And I've told you that Russian-backed separatists have controlled parts of the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine since 2014, so apparently Putin tries to at least capture the Donbas region if he can't have the whole country. But this stays interesting because until now there aren't really any tendencies towards who could win this war, if you can still call it a win for either side. These were the most important news from the past week. If you've got any suggestions on topics that we missed out on, feel free to let us know in the comments. And now to this week's bonus fact. The leading doctor in the hospital in Omsk where Navalny was treated after he was poisoned disappeared short after the incident, and soon his dead body was recovered. So it seems like the Russian military didn't like the fact that Navalny's life was partly saved by Russian doctors.